Well, we're rolling, Padden.
Amazing.
Thank you for being here. I'll be pull that in a little closer.
Wonderful.
Okay, Montana Festival. Can you tell everyone what it is, what you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So this year is the third year of Montana Festival. So at a high level, we set out, we're building what we hope is Montana's event of the year. Kind of a few years ago, we looked um, kind of at the landscape of what was going on in the state. A few big kind of trends that were happening. A lot of folks had moved to Montana, or in my case, moved back to Montana. Our cities are changing. Our startup entrepreneurship business ecosystem really is kind of reaching an inflection point, and our art and culture community as well, kind of fighting really above its weight. So these kind of three ecosystems of entrepreneurship, kind of urban design and community development, and then arts and culture. We're all at these really exciting inflection points. Lots happening, and we kind of stepped back and said, "There's not an event that is at the same kind of scale as like Cat Grizz football is for Braun. We don't really have that in an annual statewide ritual for the state." And so you just kept having a lot of conversations with folks, and 20, 25, 35 people, different conversations across those three ecosystems, and everyone kept saying, "Yeah, let's do this." And then at some point like, "Hey, are you going to do this?" And so we got after it, and this is the third year. It'll be June 10th, 11th, and 12th. And basically we're expecting about 1,000 leaders across those three ecosystems from Montana coming together. We'll have a big opening main stage on Thursday morning with keynotes, fireside chats, then break out for a huge lunch together at the Emerson in downtown Bozeman. And then folks will break into three tracks: Artland, Design Town, and Startup City. And then we have 6 evening events that people will choose from: dinners, comedy show, Main Street Entrepreneurs event at the Meridian. Lots of just really fun kind of networking and social activities. And then on Friday, everyone will choose kind of smaller meetups, activities, everything from a meetup at Umvelt, if folks want to kind of do sauna and cold plunge, to hikes with GVLT, to pickleball at Bozeman Classic Pickleball. And then everyone will come back together for 2 big closing main stages. One will be focused on kind of a new American century. It's America 250 this year. And then the final closing main stage will be the Montana Showcase. And that's where we'll really highlight Montana entrepreneurs, creators, our design leaders. And then we'll close by rolling out to a big lawn concert and party on the Emerson lawn. And so that will be the full duration.
Very cool. This will be my second year going, and I had a lot of fun and was very impressed with with last year's events.
Cool. Thank you.
When you think of with Montana Festival as a whole, is there an outcome that you're hoping to achieve coming out of this? Is there what's the bigger picture idea behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, so there's we have a general kind of outcome and hope for Montana Festival at a kind of big picture level year to year. And then each year we kind of have a specific focus.
Hi, folks. Quick note from me. If you don't already know, the goal of Mountain Mule is to build real connection between Montana's businesses and the people they serve. And if you don't know what Mountain Mule is, we provide private transportation services and Yellowstone National Park tours. If this episode or any other has given you something worth thinking about, smiling at, passing along, I've got a small ask. Share it with a friend, text it to someone, consider following the show. Whether you're using our services directly or following and sharing the show, those simple actions help support this business as well as the businesses and guests that have been a part of the show. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses, local jobs, and this beautiful state. Now back to the show.
I would say at a high level, the 3 kind of objectives that we talk about are: 1, setting a positive, normative, solutions-based vision for the future of Montana and for the country. I think this kind of was born out of the 2020 sort of time period. I'm a 5th generation Montana, and I was able to move back during that period. I was gone for 20 years, middle of 5. I'm born and raised in Great Falls, and my family all stayed and has been in Montana since I left. And it's like every Montana kid, when you kind of get out of the state, you end up spending 10, 20 years trying to find your way back home. And so I did. So I was really excited. And then the growth that I saw in Bozeman, in particular, but across the state, I thought was exciting, but obviously it creates challenges. I served on the planning board at the time, and there's just kind of this angst. So there was an opportunity, I think, and a responsibility from those of us who are from here to kind of actually set a cultural sort of vision and rhythm, and start to decide how we want to wield this powerful thing called growth, and try to create that kind of future together. So that's the first goal, is like kind of just setting really a positive vision for the state. The second piece is just gathering, connecting, and showcasing Montanan excellence. I think one of the things that is surprising to folks across the state is just how many incredible entrepreneurs are here, how many amazingly talented artists and culture creators are here, and all of our communities are growing, and we have some of the best architects and urban planners in the world here in Montana. And so just connecting those folks within their ecosystems, but then connecting them like cross-functionally is a really interesting opportunity. And our state our population is small enough that you can actually do that. And if this was somewhere else, and you put 1,000 people in a room, you might have 1,000 entrepreneurs. And so there's not a lot of spaces where you would actually mix those kind of three groups together. But really just magical things happen when you do, because I always, from my perspective, an artist, an entrepreneur, an architect, they're all essentially like, they're all creators, producers of a future that they see in their mind and doesn't yet exist. They just have different mediums. And so it's really amazing when you start to connect those people. So that second piece is just about showcasing and connecting talent. And then the final thing is, to some degree, this is an economic development conference with lipstick on it. Like, it's about bringing jobs and investment and driving economic development for the state. So those are really the three outcomes. At an individual level, the two things, we do an exit survey every year. Thank you if you took it. I think you did.
I think I did too.
I read them in great detail after each Montana Festival. But the two big questions that we ask that really matter is, one is just like an NPS score, essentially, like how likely are you to tell a friend to come to Montana Festival? And then the second one, which is probably the most important, is we ask some version of a question of like, how many people did you meet that you think will actually become a friend or a potential like professional business collaborator or work on a project together? And in the first year, the answer to that question was like 6 or 7, and the second year was 10. And so that is the number that is probably most important to me at a micro level, because this is ultimately like a social capital machine. I like, it is a wasted opportunity if we spend all this time and energy to build this thing, and if people come in and they happen to walk past someone who could have been a friend, could have been a collaborator, and then that connection doesn't happen. So a lot of what we really focus on is creating those opportunities for like designed serendipity. But yeah, and obviously you're doing that, I think, with this podcast and the community that you've built. So
yeah, so if I go back to the first thing, with the the mindset of the solution mindset, that's very much how I think when I run my business and live my life. And I appreciate that so much, and not to dog anyone, but there's so much conversation about growth, and it's so negative.
Yeah.
And I was so refreshed going there, hearing so many people talk about solutions and the inevitability of the growth.
Yeah.
But let's do it intentionally, and let's come together as a community. And I know, just seeing those renderings from the fairgrounds and everything, and it's very cool to see people think in that way. And it's something people ask me about all the time, and I ask them, what do you think of the growth? The opposite of growth, is death.
Yeah.
And being from a small town myself and seeing all the trouble and stuff that can go on in small towns with drugs and alcohol and nothing better to do, I think it's great. I see where all the issues can be too.
Yeah.
And I always think that when I look at bigger cities, these bigger cities were smaller towns at some point, and they grew into what they are now. And if we can take some of the knowledge from those situations and apply it in a better way going forward, I think we can have an awesome outcome. I'm excited about everything going on. And yeah, equal concerns to that.
Yeah, no, and I look. I mean, um, I am a native Montanan. The change, like there are parts of it that are hard, right? When I was a kid, my brother and I would, and my little sister would spend just hours, kind of roaming around up on O'Brien Creek, near Showdown, Nightheart area. And you could just wander, and you can still do this in Montana, but you could wander in the woods basically and not bump into anyone just as kids. And you know, you get more people on the trails, get more people in the street, but there's pros and cons to all this stuff. I look at, you know, my background is mostly in technology startups and then urban development and cities. And so I kind of see these things in the same way, like whether technology and growth within cities. I use the metaphor of fire. Like the fire, you know, it is a truth. It is not an invention. It is a truth that we discover, and you can warm yourself with fire. You can make your meal. You can take care of your family. You can also burn down the village. So like those things are powerful. And I think to your point, whenever I served on the planning board in Bozeman for when I first moved back for 4 years, and what I often found were the people who were most concerned about growth were actually folks who had been here maybe about 7 years. And it wasn't actually the folks who were born and raised in Bozeman or native Montanans. They definitely had their concerns. They want to make sure that kind of the character and the nature of our neighborhoods, the affordability is maintained. But anyone who is, I'm a father to two young kids, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I was a kid growing up at Great Falls in a time when it wasn't growing. And I've never met a city that is growing at the optimal rate. It is usually a choice between growth and decline. And like you said, because you use that metaphor of fire, you know, the absence of fire is darkness, and it is the cold. And so ask any parent in the world where you will vote with your feet, where you put your kid in a growing zip code or a declining zip code, and I can tell you what the answer is.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you think
Yeah.
about it. And my sister and brother-in-law both graduated from MSU, and they, as soon as they had their first son, they moved back here.
Yeah.
And their thought is, this is where we want to raise our kids.
Yeah.
This is where we want them to grow up. And it's there. I know there's a lot of cool stuff at that last year at Montana Festival
Yeah.
about education and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I get it. I just, yeah, you don't want your kid in a place that's declining. You want the best options. And I've talked with many people, kind of to what you're saying, that grew up here in Montana in different small towns, and they've been in those towns and seen that, and that's the opposite side of this equation.
Yeah, and the opportunity is that it's uplifting, right? I think that one of the things that I think in terms of is, again, back to these kind of like crossovers. Like I spent most of my life is in startups and in building of business, but in thinking kind of like in terms of economic development and in urban policy, I still think in terms of like an innovation or supply chain. So I look at the opportunity of the growth and what is happening, you know, let's say at the Yellowstone Club, to Big Sky, to Bozeman, to Great Falls, to Havre. The old kind of joke or cliche of Montana is that we're one small town with like a long main street. And our opportunity is to figure out how to create connection across those opportunities. So if only one community is getting uplifted by growth and everyone else is hurting from it, then that obviously is not like a particularly shared prosperity that is inspiring. But I think the opportunity is to figure out how those connections can kind of be shared and uplift everyone. When I was a kid, Montana wasn't a place like, if you think of like, you know, Colorado or Texas, there's Austin or Denver. There's kind of internal migration from smaller towns to the bigger town, and then people and families can, you know, stay a little bit closer. The story of cities is really one of young people moving to the well springs of social capital, acquiring those opportunities, kind of getting their feet under them, and then oftentimes people kind of moving back to where they are from and carrying that social capital with them. We did not have one of those places when I was a kid, and Bozeman is that now. Gallatin Valley is that place where, but what's interesting about that is it also just that spillover. It can uplift all of these other communities, and it means that it can have lift for Great Falls and Billings, Butte, Helena, Missoula, et cetera. And particularly because of remote work and what's happening now with we can have an entire conversation about AI and advanced manufacturing, but the ability to do more with smaller teams now actually makes Montana and our specific population and labor force actually really well positioned. And so it's just it takes coordination. And so I think like we've got you know plenty of smart, hardworking people in this state, and I think and the reason Montana Festival isn't the only thing kind of we started this nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit called Last Best Future to build Montana Festival. We do it for free. It's not my day job. Everyone's a volunteer. But basically what the objective of this thing is just building projects and programs that can help advance the future of Montana. And so starting at a big annual ritual is just kind of the most obvious place of let's bring all these people, the thousand leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, placemakers together for a couple days, inspire them, and hopefully, I always joke last year and the year before that like Montana Festival is a wedding, not a funeral, and a wedding is nothing without the marriage. So it's like what matters is what happens next, right? It's those connections and those. It might be between a business in Billings and Great Falls, and then a coffee happens, and then a partnership happens, and a couple jobs come out of it. But,
Yeah, I think about that a little while ago. Amy, she's with Big Brothers Big Sisters,
mhm.
and she had told me, kind of thinking to Bozeman and Gallatin Valley being very prosperous, but is that spreading out? They're having, I believe it's Billings. They don't have like some of these programs have dropped off with Big Brothers Big
Yeah.
Sisters, and they're trying to expand their how far they're reaching, and I know they're doing stuff in Billings, but it's kind of tough when it's really great here, but that's not
Yeah.
really rippling out into smaller towns and communities who arguably could need some of that even more than
Yeah.
the community here.
Yeah, and I think that's something that makes our culture pretty special too. I think this is a place, um, from this is also a part of Montana Festival. I think as you have people moving to Montana because they're choosing something here. If you ask, I always joke when I was on the planning board, I'd ask people who'd show up at a meeting if they'd moved here from somewhere. I said, "Why did you move to Montana? Why did you move to Bozeman?" And they'd always say three things, and it wouldn't matter if they had purple hair and a nose ring or they're wearing like a Make America Great Again hat. They would say something along the lines of, "Oh, I love Main Street and the walkability in these neighborhoods. I love the mountains and skiing or fishing or something. There's something about the outdoors." And then inevitably they'll say, "And I just love the culture. You really share my culture." And to a person, they say that. And what I think is interesting about that, and I'd usually joke and I'd be like, well, maybe it's that actually we're making kind of space for whoever you are. And like, we kind of live and let live a little bit. And there's this really kind of special thing, I think, in Montana where there's kind of this false choice between, focusing on the individual and the dreams and passions of the individual, which I definitely believe in. That is the path of, business and entrepreneurship and a creator or someone with an idea in their head. And then this idea of the community. And so I think it's a false choice. You have to choose between one of those. And what is special about the culture here is we don't really actually kind of present that false choice. Usually we generally try to celebrate people's individual success and help them. And then the classic story of a Montanan is, it didn't really happen this winter because there wasn't that much snow, but like the guy, the guy's pulled over, into a snowbank, and it's a stranger, and you hop out and you help dig them out. And I've definitely been dug out more than I've probably dug other folks out, but that is a thing that is part of our culture, and you have to invest in that. And so when you have these opportunities of growth, we have to actually ask that question. Hey, how do we make sure that this thing that is happening, that is uplifting, and that it's about opportunity, right? And giving people kind of on ramps. And so anyway, that's like one of the biggest challenges of our time is going to be presented in these this massive transformation in technology led by artificial intelligence, but it's been happening for the last 10, 15, 20 years with the mobile revolution. And then the second thing is just the affordability crisis and wealth disparity are two sides of the same coin. And those two challenges and opportunities to figure out how do you create more opportunity that is shared across more folks. Those are two of the biggest challenges of our time.
When you talk about pulling somebody out of a snowbank, I was telling you about the vehicle that rolled over in the canyon,
Yeah.
and I stopped because this rollover had just happened, and we helped the woman and some of the kids out of the car. I think, and I'm not a native Montanan, but I grew up in a small town, and I just understand that help your neighbor thing. I feel I think a healthy sense of obligation as a business owner and a local here. Like it's just not even negotiable in my head, and I know the risk and the dangers that I take on stopping anywhere in that canyon
Yeah.
on the side of the road, especially at night. But I hope that those are the types of things that continue with the
Yeah.
growth, because I do think that's what makes this place so special. And people have asked me that question, why'd you move here? And I've said a handful of things, probably all the things you mentioned, but I really like, if I said it one word, and it's corny, but I just say love.
Yeah.
Because you feel it in I don't know if it's in the atmosphere, if it's in the people. I think it's a combination of all, but there's something special in the way people treat each other, and just
Yeah.
the culture that's created here. And I think, to what you said, it's not exclusive to, it's just so open and inviting, kind of regardless of who you are, you feel a level of acceptance. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it just creates. I don't know. It's a chicken or egg thing, but it's the place, it's the people, but it's in the air.
Yeah. And part of it, I think, is like, Montana is not like everyone who, whether you're born here or you've moved here, usually you're giving something up or you're taking a risk, and it is harder. The again, this winter wasn't very hard, but like the land and just the environment is both kind of awe-inspiring, that makes you realize that you're smaller than it. I'm a mountain kid, not an ocean kid, but the feeling of being here is not dissimilar to staring at the ocean. It kind of reminds you of how small you are. But then that second piece of that, like, everyone who is choosing to be here, that's a little bit of a shared process. And so I think it just, it puts kind of everything in perspective for people. And then you end up kind of, wanting to, when I first met my wife, she was born in New York City, but raised in DC. And she's like, Montana's the only place I've ever visited where everyone identifies with the state. They don't identify with like the city they're from, or kind of that sort of thing. And yeah, it's just it is a special culture. And I think, one of the things that I realized is most of what and in talking with other kind of Montanan sort of boomerang kids that were born and raised here, left and kind of came back, is a lot of this stuff is never actually codified or written down, or it wasn't even really said to me. It was just shown. It was just like shown how to behave and how to treat each other. And so I think we have a responsibility, if we believe that if that culture is special, then rather than, if someone shows up from Texas or California or New York or whatever, most of the migration, by the way, inside of Montana is actually inside of the state now, or from surrounding states, is actually what the data shows. But if those folks show up, like, rather than saying like, oh, kind of saying, oh, you're here, and kind of not welcoming them, most people are trying to adapt to their new home. And so you got to kind of show them, like, so if one of the things is, like, on trails, everyone generally, like, kind of waves to each other, says hi. I think it's just a nature of like a population density thing that comes from, like, it's pretty weird if you walk by someone you haven't seen someone in 10 minutes to not wave to them. But if you're walking by someone, there's, person and person and person and person. The first time I left Montana, I would, like, in grocery stores, I would, like, be like, oh, hey, whenever I walk past someone. And so at some point that becomes an odd thing because there's too many people. And so if this is something that we want to teach to people who don't have that, then, like, you gotta say, kind of like, I think it's totally fine to say, welcome home. What can we do to help? And what are you going to do to help this place? I think all of those are totally, like, fair responses to change and growth. And I think, that's part of what Montana Festival is. The other piece of it is just, like, I think everyone gets, you mentioned the design shred last year. So this year, so that was our first kind of experiment doing. It was really fun. We basically partnered with the Gallatin County Fairgrounds and some political leaders from the county. And it wasn't a formal process, but it was basically just a visioning exercise. It kind of a fast run at a design charrette with 100, 150 architects, designers, entrepreneurs, community leaders, of looking at this thing that is right in the middle and the heart of Bozeman, our fairground, and saying, what could this be? Because there's a lot of activity. The farmers market's there, hockey is there, lots of things that we love. There's a lot of space. So what could you turn this into? And just that visioning exercise, I think, is what we're trying to instill across the festival generally. It's about our culture, our communities, our economy. Just being able to ask, like, what if, and imagine what you would want. I've got above one of my favorite lines in the world is a line by the Irish poet George Bernard Shaw. I have a part of it above my kid's bed, and it says, "Dream of things that never were." And so the full line, and the first time I actually heard this line, it was I think an RFK kind of speech when I was a kid. But the full line is, "Some men see the way things are and ask why. Others dream of things that never were and ask why not." And I think that we get so used to seeing the way things are, or we're frustrated by those things that we think we can't change or what we consider normal. But there's an opportunity to step back and be like, this is all made up. It's all made up by people who came before us, and we can change it. We can make it better. We can, we can create, businesses that don't exist yet. We can create art that doesn't exist yet. We can change the nature of everything. And I think once you realize that, that's a really, really powerful thing to know as an individual, but also as a community. Like there's nothing more powerful than, a handful of smart, good humans in a room who care about their town or their state. So
Yeah, I love that quote, and I wasn't there for the design part of those renderings, but I was there when they were being shown.
yeah,
I was talking to a woman, Stacy, who's got a business, Common Form, in the Cannery District, and that's adjacent to the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And I was telling her, I don't know if this was part of the design, so I might have made this up. I might have seen this and thought I made it up, but I was thinking, man, if you connected that fairgrounds with that layout to the Cannery District, which is booming.
Yeah.
And I told her there's got to be a walk bridge that goes over Oak because I mean, and I just thought bringing those together, because it looks beautiful, those renderings with the ponds in them and the walkways and the the fairgrounds and everything. It's that's a special place anyway. If you go to the rodeo there that they do now, and then I play in a men's baseball league here, and we'll play at that baseball.
Yeah, that's a nice part.
If you're sitting there at home plate, getting up to bat and looking at the bridgers behind that, and there's nothing that feels more special for me like playing baseball, seeing those mountains, and you get goosebumps just being there.
Yeah. There's a lot of just great kind of like activity of life that already happens. The team at the fairgrounds has I think done a great job. And it's just, but it's actually all the human life is there without the actual, like, the form being designed yet. And so, I think the most fun reaction to that process, because there was maybe like 10 different visions that came together, and one of them got showcased, the Bozeman Chronicle showcased on the front page of the paper. And the biggest question I had from people were like, "Oh, is this going to happen? Is this possible?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's kind of up to you. You're like, this is the beautiful thing about this thing we call democracy, is we get to kind of make it up as we go." But Common Form's a great business. I bought my wife some earrings from Common Form years ago, and she was a big fan. And so generally that's my go-to when it's Valentine's or
Stacy brought a pair of the earrings when she did the podcast, because she had a pair of earrings that were on the Yellowstone show, and they blew up, and it was a cool
porcupine quill. I think.
I was thinking that when you were saying, I know you like touched on AI, and you're talking about that quote of dream of things that haven't been done. That's a really fun thing you can do with some imagery in AI. And me and my fiance have messed around with it, but you can generate stuff if if your imagination, like if you can think of the idea, you can put it in there, and you can paint some awesome possibilities. And I asked myself this question this spring. I guess I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but I had like occasionally a few times in my life I'd taken some psilocybin mushrooms in a therapeutic sense, not as much in a recreational sense. But remember after that asking myself, what does it really mean, and what would it really be like to have have a business that changed people's lives and improves the community, and not just in a kind of, I guess, bullshit way, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term, but actually making a difference in people's lives. And I haven't stopped thinking about that question, and I've been, working on some things to make it happen. But I get excited when I hear about a quote like that, and I
Yeah.
hear about, yeah, we can, you know, there's a lot of possibilities of what we could do and what this community could be if we
Yeah.
come together. And then, yeah, you start talking with multiple people, and they give you a new perspective, and kind of like you're saying with the architects and the entrepreneurs and the artists, it's a pretty stealthy combo.
Well, and like vision is contagious. Like just like if you look at the little microcosm right there in the Cannery District as an example. Stacy's business, it's right next to Jarrett and Candace's business. Shan, amazing, restaurant. James Beard nominated for best new restaurant in America. That entire kind of ecosystem that Barry Brown and the Cannery District team had built is this incredible little coral reef of entrepreneurs and creators, and it's contagious when you see someone build a thing that was in their mind, and then it becomes real and people want it, and they go and it becomes a community. Like Shan is like, it's like Bozeman's, like, kind of feels like Bozeman's kitchen almost. Like
Yeah.
it's like going home when you go there. I'd end up bumping into like 15 people I know. Um, and they've managed to make, like the pricing at that quality still, like, it's just really competitive. It's amazing, but it just makes it, whether you're a kid or you're an adult, it is intoxicating to see people who are out doing their thing. And because you're like, oh, anything is possible. And the piece of I think, so this year, Montana Festival's kind of frame is really focused, not in kind of an overly intense way, but the natural framing is this year is America 250. It's our 250th anniversary of the founding of the country, and so that's kind of the frame of one of the main stages, kind of this America at a crossroads and a new American century sort of framing, and just being able to like step back and say, like, what does the American Dream 2.0 look like? What does Pax Americana 2.0 look like? What is an American city in this century that we have the ability to input and change those things? It can become daunting for people to think at a country level. But there's another good quote. I hope I'm not misattributing it, but there's this Mother Teresa quote of, like, if you want to change the world, start with your family. And, the same is like, if you want to change the world, start with your town. And so I think there's this interesting thing. Derek Thompson spoke about this last year at Montana Festival, but there's this interesting thing where someone in Montana probably knows more about what's going on in Ukraine or now in Iran than they might in their own community, right? That down their street or a city over, hey, what's going on in Billings or Havre? And that's important, because I think as human beings, like, we have, particularly as human beings who are citizens of this country, we have a kind of a responsibility to knowledge, but also to know, like, what is the role that we play in the world. But the most important role that you play in this world is the one that you play within your family and your neighborhood and your town and your state. And it's empowering once you do that. And those things have ripples. I think every one of those business leaders, the business that you've built, you touch people, you bring real joy to people's families, and it advances the economy. Like, growth and opportunity is what creates the opportunity for progress and keeps everything moving, so we can feed our families, take our kids to school, be happy, and move forward from one winter to a beautiful summer. So yeah, no, this has been kind of a labor of love for me, and we build kind of the structure, and what we can't control is how people show up. And that is, like, the most fun part of this, is just watching everyone show up with excitement and helping each other, and the stories that come out of it, the connections that come out of it have been really fun. So this year, it's really kind of a mosaic of things. There's main stages, these side events, and the side events are all hosted. So those aren't like I'm engineering every one of them. We're just like we put out the call to folks, hey, do you want to host something? And so Umvelt, Meridian, Katie Stolen, State of Play, also in the Cannery District, back to education, is just doing incredible things. in kind of that early education space, like, from childcare to kind of she's exploring stuff through kind of eighth grade. Um, but yeah, everyone's hosting these events and bringing people together. So we're just trying to create kind of a mosaic or tapestry of events. And it's once a year. And so it's not, an event does not, change the world, but it does create a convening opportunity to like let people come out of themselves a little bit, step out of their lives, and then dream big, and then commit to each other to go build some stuff. And I think that's what's exciting about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's ripple effects that come out of that you can't necessarily measure, but you can see in time. I think too in the Cannery District, Amanda with Sky Oro,
Yeah,
she
she's
did a
incredible.
podcast a while back, and there's everything in that space. There's
Oh,
something going on over there.
and Amanda's hosting. It's actually, if Amanda's listening, her event is already sold out. So she's hosting Montana um, uh, Women in Business Leaders Coffee at Montana Festival. It's on Friday morning, and I really wanted to make sure that we scheduled it early enough so that like you don't have to choose between being a woman or being an entrepreneur or going or a designer and going to these other things. So it's kind of early, and it's like 8 a.m. I think. But it's pretty large capacity. I think there's like 150 person capacity, and it's already sold out. So what we're talking about doing is assuming the weather is good, which I'm sure by the grace of God it will be beautiful. We got rained on last year, so I think this year in June will be a little bit better. But I think we're going to open it up to be outside as well, and we'll see if if we can up that RSVP count to maybe 250 or 300. But that's something that everyone wants to attend, and it's included. It's a free event within the context of the festival.
Yeah, my fiance, she's a member there, and she loves that place, and I'm pretty sure she's already signed up for that event. It was really cool hearing Amanda's story because it was so many different people that came together to make that place become something,
Yeah,
and it took on a life of its own, and now it's just been a creative space
yeah,
for people. I mean, for women, but it's very cool to see that what
yeah,
that whole ecosystem is.
yeah, yeah. We have a few. My part of my past life, I worked at WeWork for a number of years in San Francisco and New York, and so I I kind of I love the kind of innovation ecosystem building, but the co-working kind of social work and social club kind of model. But across the state, actually, we've got just some great communities happening. Within Bozeman itself, Sky Oro, the Sidecar. I'm an advisor and free advisor to Sidecar. I was trying to bring WeWork to Montana at this point, it was 7, 8 years ago, and I met Jason, the founder of Sidecar, and he's like, "Oh, is WeWork coming here?" I'm like, "The only person at WeWork, thinking about this is me. I'm trying to make it. I just want to come home." And he's like, "Help me with Sidecar." And so Sidecars across the state, they're doing great work. Kiln opened up, has a really great, beautiful space, beautiful, great community. Engine Works on the MSU Innovation Campus. Like there's these. It's been really cool. And then honestly, Rockford Coffee is still probably the best like co-working community space in Bozeman. That place is just humming with kind of entrepreneurs and architects, and it's really an important watering hole of the community. But across the state, these different communities are popping up, and I think those things are really those are really important to have. That like obviously Montana Festival, we're building up one big annual ritual, but those communities are where you wake up on a 30 below February, and you might be an entrepreneur who's saying, "Man, am I doing this thing correctly, or where are my people?" And it's good to be able to walk into one of those warm spaces, and you find other crazy people, who are building amazing things.
Yeah, it can be a little isolating if you're an entrepreneur
Yeah,
too. And I've found more and more there's so many great different groups and masterminds and people just coming together to innovate and share some camaraderie
yeah,
too. And because you can feel pretty isolated, but when you go to a place like all the places you just mentioned, there's so many of them. You feel it feels even more like home, and you don't feel
yeah,
like you're in it alone.
yeah. Yeah, and we've got in this state, I think, it becomes a positive contagion. Within the state, we have some incredible businesses that are young but fast growing, really fast growing startups. Like, so I'm biased with Reveal, but Garrett at Reveal, Laura at Onyx Maps, what Pete and Ben Little have built at Bridger Photonics, like the Bridger Aerospace, Travis Wood at Lattice Materials, like it used to be kind of in this kind of startup and innovation ecosystem for like larger companies. There was maybe one or two, and everyone was like, okay, this is the company kind of sort of thing. And now there's just incredible, like pretty significant employers. It's really being led, I think, out of Gallatin Valley, but also Missoula and kind of Flathead Valley, Whitefish area as well. And those the vision and the inspiration of a founder is essential. I am a startup operator, not a founder, so I also have my bias. I think the builders are equally important, but yeah, it becomes contagious because you see what is possible, and it's not one of these things where you're like, oh, that's only going to happen in San Francisco or New York. And it's not just technology companies. I just named a bunch of technology companies, but it's, like Stacy with Common Form, great, like fashion, apparel, CPG companies, outdoor life, hospitality, tourism companies like yours. It is a very, very cool time to be in Montana. I feel like my 5-year-old is just now kind of like asking the questions of like what, like my 3-year-old says that what I do for a living is push buttons. Like she sees me on a computer, and my 5-year-old meets everyone, and he's met the mayor, the previous mayor, the next mayor, and he's like, okay, so there's mayors, and then there's people who are entrepreneurs. He knows that word, artists, and it's just very cool to be able to see. If you're a kid, you cannot really envision what your future would be unless you've met someone who's at least done something approximate to it. So, he told me that he primarily wants to be a construction worker and never get married, not be a dad, just build.
Nice.
I'm like, wait, why are you worrying about any of this right now? Like, don't worry, you don't got to get married.
I want to ask you about the Engine Works building.
Yeah.
And but I'm just thinking, John Zerke. So he does stuff with the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center up in Big Sky.
Yeah.
And the Big Sky local population is really small.
Yeah.
But the school is involved with that
Yeah.
Performing Arts Center. And I was telling him, back to coming from a small town, that a lot of kids in that high school get involved with the shows that they put on.
Yeah.
And to what you're saying right now, when a young kid can see something like that and see, a big name performer come in.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, is how do these smaller towns, instead of just having Bozeman be this spring that doesn't go out, but when people in that small town can see what's going on and see the potential, to what your son is saying, that's so cool, that the way your mind can expand then, because we, by default become the product of our environment.
Yeah.
And sometimes our thoughts won't really expand outside that environment. And if it's a small, isolated, closed off one, it's just a bummer that to see thoughts that are cut off so short.
Yeah. Yeah. No, actually it's interesting. At last summer, to that example, like, Montana has really become a leader in photonics and in quantum. And last summer, I took our kids, went to there was an event at MSU out on the lawn, and we bumped into a bunch of kids that were kids from Browning, from the high school, who were in town. There, everyone was wearing matching shirts and said something about like quantum or something. I'm like, hey, what are you guys all here for? And they're high school kids from Browning, and they'd spent the weekend doing basically like this like accelerated program at MSU in quantum. And I'm like, so what did you learn? And it, I am just fluent enough in that topic to get myself into trouble in quantum, but they were like deep in it. And I don't know, I had kind of flashbacks to me being that those kids were probably 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds maybe. It was amazing. And now like that's all of a sudden something that 14-year-old kid who's growing up in Browning then kind of thinks about. So those opportunities are really important. One of the things we're doing this year at Montana Festival is we're teaming up with MSU to have a Montana Good Jobs Fair at the Rialto, and we're basically going to do like it's kind of like Not Your Father's Jobs Fair sort of kind of a structure, where we'll do 9 CEOs or leaders at companies basically doing quick pitches, like in batches of 3, and then mix and mingle around kind of high top tables. But at least at a university level, this won't be high school kids, but um, and obviously it's in the summer, so a lot of kids will have already gone home. But trying to team up to make sure that we get students from MSU and potentially University of Montana. UM has been a sponsor of Montana Festival the last 2 years as well. But to be able to get that exposure, someone told me once that like most of life is a combination of talent and then exposure. Like if you are a talented kid but you never get exposed to opportunity, there's no way that you're going to be able. You just don't know. You just don't know what you're capable of if you don't see it, and then you're not exposed to an opportunity for someone to take a bet on you. But yeah, Big Sky is an extremely important kind of part of this state of the population that lives there full time is growing and is pretty strong, tight knit community. I think the community up there has done a good job. But the people who just come through, like Montana, is a gift to the world, and when people come through, they get excited. And I think creating opportunities for people to kind of maintain that relationship and then come back and maybe bring some jobs here, hire some people remotely or physically, or just invest here, or obviously or just come and spend time in the summer, winter with us, and ideally also like go to other places, bring some of those tourism dollars to Cascade County and to Great Falls and other places. Yeah, no, it's I think all of it is very, very exciting, and it going back to the original question of growth. It is it, it, there's also a universe where that opportunity is not shared. And so you had mentioned the magic basically of what AI allows you to do. I remember being a kid when we first got the internet, and it was just like this huge unlock. I'm sitting in Great Falls, and all of a sudden you can, and eventually you can sell to the world, but all of a sudden you're connected to anything you possibly wanted to know or ask or wonder. And it feels to me like this moment that we're in is that, but just at a completely different scale. And so anything that you can imagine, you can now create. And so what that means for, some of this you see like the term AI slop, because I mostly write and sell words for a living. And so like you see a lot of really bad writing, but but folks who use these tools well to take the vision that if you're an architect or you're an artist, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a writer, you can create. If you're an urban planner, actually, the tools now, so much of the affordability crisis is actually about time, the inability to build the things that we need to build quickly enough so that we can actually, that carrying cost of capital does not get pushed on to ultimately you or me and buying or renting something. But a lot of that is just because people need to actually make sure that things are up. It's the back office sort of work of code compliance, and that's a human process. It's really complicated. And now, if you can stand on the shoulders of these, robots, so to speak, you can speed a lot of that up. I think the opportunity of AI is that all of us can become an entrepreneur or a creator, and we can take the thing that is given to us by God or science or magic, and then create it into the world. And that is an opportunity. The threat is if that change happens so fast that we as a society cannot metabolize that quickly enough, or that we're not quickly enough give those tools to all of us so that we can all benefit from it. And the chasm could be massive and fast. And I think it is probably it is hard to say that there is a more exciting or more horrifying time to be alive. But how lucky are we to be born in this time, to live in this place and in this country. I think I wouldn't choose another century or another zip code.
I agree. I'm thinking of my fiance. She does brand strategy and website design,
Yeah.
and I'm obviously a little bit biased, but she's very talented.
Yeah.
When you say AI slop, she's shown me how to use so much of it in my business, and it's so helpful, and she does. But she's also, really intentional.
Mhm.
So you can kind of have this illusion that you can just like throw everything into AI and it'll solve all. And she really knows how to sort through that and sort things out. And she makes beautiful websites and beautiful designs, but it kind of takes that deeper knowledge of
For sure,
what it's doing, and she knows where it can be used. But You see, like I see a lot of stuff, and I'm getting a little more just cued into it when you
Mhm.
see it on social media and you see it, and it's just
Yeah.
it's getting better and better.
Yeah.
It's like I think we all know that, but
Yeah.
it's you can tell when it's kind of just been like generated and
Yeah, this I mean I have a WhatsApp group with a bunch of friends from college, and they probably are going to kick me out of this group because I send them screenshots of like LinkedIn posts and like with red circled on, because you can see it like there's negative positive like framing things like this is not X, this is Y, sort of like, and you see that's obviously like ChatGPT generated content. I think it's using your wife as an example, like this is not a new phenomenon. It is just, I mean, this technology is new, but anytime there's an advancement in supply chain or the tools that we use, a similar sort of thing will happen. So like look at food. Like we had for most of human history, we had scarcity. And then the industrial revolution and advancement in agriculture, all of a sudden we have an abundance of food, but it doesn't mean it's good food, right? It's not that it's good for you. And humans are smart and we pay attention. And so as those things happen, you start to get discerning taste. There's kind of this hierarchy of needs that is met. I think that same thing is happening within AI. And so I look at this as like, if you think about whether you're you know, UI UX designer and you brand strategist, you build websites, or you're a lawyer, or you're an architect, or you're a doctor, there's so much of what we do in our jobs that aren't necessarily that highest version of our craft. It's the administrative stuff. And I think that is the powerful thing, is like a great brand strategist standing on the shoulders of these tools is going to make an exceptional website faster, better than they would have otherwise. And it's definitely going to be better than someone who is not a great brand strategist. But it also lowers the barriers to entry in those things. It means that all of us can be a little bit more dangerous in these things if you put in the time. It just be like the gating functions to like, well, do you have to go to design school? Do you have to go to architecture school? Do you have to get, like, some of these things are properly gated, so buildings don't fall down, so laws are not broken. You know, lawyers and architects probably need certificates, but the question I think that the biggest challenge that we'll have will be one of the rate of change, because unlike, you know, people use references to, like, the classic one is steel reinforced buildings, the invention of the elevator. Then it's like, well, the elevator got rid of of the automated elevator gets rid of the elevator operator, and then changing, from typewriters to computers, and all those things are useful comps, but the rate of change is just so drastically different. The question that we have to contend with is, there will be disruption. There will be losses, massive losses and disruptions to workforce, and there will be massive gains. But those things will not be one-to-one, and each individual person is a human being with a family and dreams and susceptible. We talked earlier about what happens in a place in decline. We are, every single person is, like, at our best, extremely talented, can build things. If we are satiated and can dream, can be great. If we are all of a sudden in a place of economic crisis, we are human beings with an 8-pound brain sitting on top of us that is in crisis. And if all of a sudden you can't make ends meet, and it leads to depression, drug and alcohol abuse, these sorts of things, we need to plan for this thing that is happening in our society. And unfortunately, if we look at where, like, the internet kind of revolution, the kind of mobile software revolution, we did not plan, like, at a national level, we have not proven that we are good at helping society metabolize change. Like, the answer cannot be, oh, you worked in a coal mine, now go become an engineer. Oh, you're an engineer, and now, Claude can do your job, 10x as fast. Like, I don't think that Congress is going to save us. So we do need to think at a local level and a state level, how are we going to contend with the overwhelming beauty and horror of this tsunami of opportunity and disruption coming our way? Because it's coming fast. Like,
yeah, and I'm like someone who has a transportation chauffeur and tour company, with people driving vehicles. I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, in many cities, there's autonomous vehicles, and I've rode in a Waymo recently, and So I think about that, what differentiates us? How are we like, what is the value beyond just the driver? Because the driver cannot be the only value add at some point, and we're
Yeah.
we're getting closer and closer to that. But it's something I think about, and I think a lot of people do, depending on
Yeah.
what you do, because some jobs are evaporating, and
Yeah.
so like you said, a lot of admin stuff.
Yeah.
I brought this up a few times. I've got a really good bookkeeper, and she had said to me, I wonder how you'll get to a really high level bookkeeper or CPA if you kind of don't start down at that entry level,
Yeah.
indexing QuickBooks and
Yeah.
doing that stuff. And it's an interesting thought, because if all that entry level stuff is automated, how are these experts
Yeah.
and these pros seasoned and developed? And I hadn't really thought about that too much, but it is interesting to think about if a lot of this entry level stuff is automated, like where to get your licks in to become
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
a quote unquote expert in any of these areas.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, yeah, particularly within services, law firms, consulting firms, brand design, like those first entry jobs, I think there will still be um, some, but any of those businesses that were shaped in like a kind of a pyramid, it's not going to be that way. And yeah, the on ramps to learning, because the young people are already hit with this challenge of like with remote work. Like if you have already acquired social capital, you've already learned a lot of kind of that base level sort of craft, and then you're operating. It's easy to kind of carry social capital and carry talent remotely. It's really hard to create it remotely, to create experiences for young people remotely where there's knowledge transfer, learning, just kind of like being in rooms with people, being able to see how something's done. And now coupled with AI, it is going to change the nature of the labor market. And we need to figure it out. The thing, I'm an eternal optimist. Like back to the like everything around us that we call normal is made up. And like we can change it. We've also we are capable of coming together and navigating these things and figuring it out as individuals, as students, as parents. An example, right? Like so much of the university system that we now take for granted today, the idea that you hit 18 and you go to college and you use 4 years and this opportunity, a lot of that was really accelerated through essentially a world war caused, like built a lot of that infrastructure in post, because we created the GI Bill and we're like, what are all these, young men going to go and do? And we're going to probably need that level of that scale of innovation, and and thought for how to contend with this. And just to be clear, there's going to be a massive amount of opportunity, like the ability for a young person, because and there's a little bit of a funny part of this. So like in some ways, young people, it's scarier for them because those first, how do you get your licks in? The other piece though is like, be careful who you worry about, because as like, now I think you and I might be considered young old guys or old young guys. I'm not sure, but younger people, or if you're 20 or 22, they're actually like, using these tools natively. They just kind of are growing up in them. So I will have to learn. Like I've been playing with like Claude Cowork and I'm fascinated by it. I'm a little nervous. Like I wouldn't ever give it to the kind of the keys to the kingdom of my email or anything yet. But a lot of younger people, just they're already managing multiple agents. They already are. I joked my daughter thinks I hit buttons this for work, like on a keyboard. A lot of young people just use like whisper flow and voice to text. And so it is, we all basically need to navigate this change as individuals and together. And it's going to happen really, really, really fast.
I don't know if you have crossed paths with these, we'll call them young men, because I guess they're not kids. Chase and Chris is their name, and they started a student-led VC with MSU.
Yeah. Yeah. The, Absorca
Yeah,
Capital,
and I
right?
think they're working on a different name for it.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
but it's it.
Yeah.
And they came and did the podcast, and I
Yeah.
sat down with them, and I was so impressed with them as like 20 and 21
Yeah.
year old. They were well spoken, they were sharp, and they had this idea, and they put it
Yeah.
together, and yeah, kind of what you're saying. I'm like, man, these kids are on it.
So Yeah, so actually, so I'm supposed to get, as you say that, I think I've dropped the ball on this. I'm supposed to get coffee with Chris, and I had to reschedule. I've been kind of burning from both ends on work and then Montana Festival stuff. But I got introduced to them from Liz Markey at Two Bear Capitals, which is based in Whitefish. She's an amazing Montana, wonderful human, has set up a lot of the so much of it we take for granted in the innovation space. Actually, Liz and others have their fingerprints all over. But she said the same thing. She's like, these guys are really bright, and they're really there. There is a challenge in our. It's not just the VC ecosystem of entrepreneurs. I'm kind of agnostic whether you're a Main Street entrepreneur, you have a small business, or you're building a technology company. The overall the capital structures might be different, but the big motions are similar, right? It takes a founder with a vision and a plan, and then how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, sort of thing. But we do have this capital gap at the earliest stage of that, like at that what used to be a friends and family round. And so like things that are AI backed, the tools make it so that you don't need that much capital. But if you're starting a new restaurant in not just Bozeman, but if you're starting a new restaurant in Bozeman, Missoula, Billings, the capital that is required is serious. If you're starting a startup, that first kind of tranche, it has historically been missing. We've got great local venture capital teams in Next Frontier Capital and Two Bear and others, but that early stage is missing, and it looks like it's potentially going to get solved not by some older guys with gray in their beard, but like a couple of young guys that looked at it, took it very seriously, and are like earning the trust of everyone I know who have met these guys. They talk about them not as kids, but as like you got to meet with it. What they're doing is really thoughtful. So
Yeah, and a couple friends and connections of mine introduced me to them and said the same thing. And I was just, I was asking them, like, man, how did you guys? I don't know. I've got 15 years on you guys, but you guys seem like you're so on it. And how'd you figure this out? And they're like, just go network, talk to everyone. And I'm like, I have this probably bias in my head. I just don't know enough people that age, but like the younger generations aren't as good with socialization just because of the technology. But these kids I was impressed by just the way they were getting around and getting out there.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things. It's like with most things in life, like two things can be true at the same time. I think like, we are of a generation that an older generation said that, we'd never buy a home because we spend too much money on avocado toast and things. I've never really been a big fan of avocado toast myself, but like what they say about the kids they don't know how to talk to each other. They don't play. They don't go outside. Some of this maybe isn't so bad. They don't drink. It's probably I probably would have been better if I drank less beer as a young person. But in my experience, like there are some just incredible students I've met at MSU. At high school and at Montana Festival, we have every year the Bozeman High speech and debate kids come and volunteer for us. And I was like, the kids are fine. They are incredible. We actually had May speak on stage last year, and we get, feedback on every single, like, what rate your favorite conversation, your least favorite conversation.
I remember this.
Yeah.
That was at the Armory, right?
Yeah. She's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And so just a brilliant, creative, like wonderful communicator. Yeah, no, I think the kids are fine, but this thing that we're going through, where we are not doing this alone. Like it is every single, I think everyone has formative kind of core memories. I was in 10th grade I was late to school driving to Charlie Marion Russell High School in Great Falls when 9/11 happened. I know where I was. I was in 2008, I was actually, of all things, I had a class called Global Financial Crises that was supposed to be about like 1929 in school when the entire economy fell out at the bottom. And I think we all probably know where we were when COVID hit. There is a thing coming, and we talk about it as though it's here, and it has not happened yet. There will be that moment where massive opportunity, massive disruption, akin to the creation of electricity or fire happens, and how we navigate that as individuals and as our families and as a society is going to shape the next 100 years. And there are much smarter people than me that work in this space every day, and a lot of them live in this town, and a lot of them will be at Montana Festival, and you'll be able to hear from them. Brandon McBee, the co-founder of CoreWeave, is here. Alex Pruden, he's the CEO of Project 11 for basically post quantum cryptography of what happens when the machines are so smart and so fast that your Gmail is no longer secure. Your Stockman Bank or Chase account are no longer secure. So like good, smart Montanans and Americans are working on these issues. But it's coming and it's coming fast. And again, though, like I wouldn't pick another century or zip code to be alive. I think we are there. This year we have a Code of the Fest for that's kind of a playful take on the Code of the West, and we so there are kind of six things in that. But this year our totes have one of them on it that says, "By grace or by journey, we are all home," and it goes back to that thing about what is our responsibility as Montanans and being welcoming. But I, for me, like, by the grace of God, I was born in Great Falls, Montana, and I was like, I don't know anything other than being a Montanan. And in a way, though, that is a thing that you actually have to learn to appreciate. You have to learn to be grateful for. Whereas, like with my wife, she is by journey, like people who gave something up, who left somewhere to become a Montanan and find your way home. And I don't know. I think we're very lucky, and I think we are obviously in this as individuals and with our own families, but as a community, this is an exciting moment. And I don't know. I'm an eternal optimist, so I will, when fire comes or electricity comes or AI comes, whatever it is, I will always be on the side of the entrepreneurs and the builders and the artists and the community leaders.
I'm right there with you because I'm always leaning towards optimism. And I'm thinking when you were saying two things can be true at the same time, with the younger generation being more connected and social. When I said that to Chase and Chris, I really appreciated it because Chase pushed back and he's like, I disagree with you, Tim. He's like, I think and even that, I feel like half the people my own age talking with me might have just agreed with me to agree with me.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was, I'm like 15 years his senior and he's coming here and sitting down with me and he pushes back and tells me that, it's like, it just gave me so much more respect for them as a generation that I'm not a part of, but it makes me more optimistic to see that those are the types of people that are doing cool stuff.
And some confidence in it. I think one of the things I joke about, and like Montana Festival mostly is about showcasing ideas and solutions, but there are questions that have multiple answers and we don't know what it is right yet, or it's subjective. And I think one of the things that is kind of, and it's odd to me in the zeitgeist of America, which I actually don't think is true in Montana, at least not true in Great Falls, is like we have become a more confrontational society, but we're not comfortable with confrontation. So growing up, like I'm the middle of five kids, big Irish family in Montana, and like I'm very comfortable with confrontation because they're like, and in this culture here, like you can argue with each other, you can argue about politics, and then you'll get a beer together. Like but you spoke about love earlier, and I think I love ideas, and I think that there's ultimately you can find your way to a correct answer on anything. And so the sparring of it, of figuring out how to solve a thing through policy, what the right answer is on growth, or how to figure something out, requires debate and dialogue and some degree of like good faith confrontation. And I actually think that is something that you have to learn culturally and learn. And I at least in, Montana's a big place, so I don't know that's true everywhere, but at least in Great Falls, Montana, there's if you say something and someone disagrees, they let you know very directly. Like, and they will, we will still have a beer or a sandwich with you after. But I think that's an opportunity for us and to encourage with young people. It's about also like showing respect, though. Like, I think what happens often at a national level is people don't like an idea that they hear, and then kind of our brains are wired to in-group and out-group people. We are tribal in nature. And so the beautiful thing about being tribal in nature is like, if you spend any time with an individual face to face, all of these, biochemical sort of things happen to you that make you say, hey, you are actually of my tribe, you're my friend, and you assume good faith. There's lots of data on this actually within workspaces, like workplaces, like the more time you spend in person together, you will assume good faith if there's a conflict or disagreement. But the reverse is true, where if you hear someone say a thing, a policy idea or something political that you don't agree with, then you assume, oh, they're a bad person and they're not in my tribe. There's a my good tribe and they're a bad tribe. And I think that that is something that we need to break in our society. This breaking down of kind of binary tribes and kind of Manichaean thinking. And I suspect that I don't know. I'm confident. I think maybe the kids will save us from that. They're definitely they are definitely trained differently. That I think the mobile uh, the screen time piece of this, I think actually is pretty bad for all of us. But I think that we were all kind of brought, whether you're a child or an adult going through this, that screen time piece and kind of infinite scroll and this sort of thing, the algorithms. I do think that is probably objectively bad across the board. But these kids have had access to more information and more knowledge um, at the tip of their fingers than anyone. Like I remember going from analog to then we all had the internet, and so I feel grateful to be part of that. But they've had it forever, and so yeah, they're smart, they're fast, and there are trade-offs to all these things.
Yeah, to what you're saying, with our differences and disagreements politically or across the board, I've experienced that firsthand. I've sat down with close to a couple hundred people now,
Yeah,
and there's all kinds of things that I know we don't align on, but you sit long enough and you talk, and you feel that human connection, and
yeah,
that's universal.
yeah,
But yeah, when you kind of latch onto those, a few views that you don't agree with, and especially when it is over the phone or over
yeah,
the internet. But when you sit face to face, it's hard. You just feel the humanness, and
yeah,
that's what I love about Montana, and that's why I've been pretty adamant about this being an in-person podcast and
yeah,
a Montana podcast, because I realize that connection, like we're building that connection as a community, and we all ultimately want the same thing, affordable housing, safety, and
yeah,
we all just have a lot of different ideas on how to get there.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that are most people are comfortable living in some nuance. Like I'd say like 66% of people in this country or in the state probably actually are on any given topic, have some degree of nuance and understand complexity in their heads. It is difficult in a media environment, or an environment's the wrong word. It makes it sound as though like it grows out like grass or trees. It's a media economy. And so where people are incentivized, whether it's, cable news shows or it's an algorithm, folks are incentivized for engagement. And the noisiest, most simplified, divisive opinions on either side of the spectrum are those that will be most engaging. And so where someone might be inclined to have more nuance in their heart or in their head when if they're talking to their neighbor about a difficult issue, it that can quickly go away in kind of an electoral environment or in a news media environment where it's like, do you agree with this team or that team? And I think we have a really rare. There's this quote from I think it's a Bill Clinton quote that I usually don't like to like use quotes from politicians because people have opinions about all of them. But good ideas are good ideas, I think. But there's a line of that he said, "There's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed by what's right with America." And I remember hearing that as a kid. It resonated with me. And I think now of what's going on in the country, and I think about this a lot in the context of Montana Festival and America 250, is there's nothing that is wrong with America that cannot be fixed with what is right with Montana. And I think that we often kind of think of ourselves as small, like our economy relative to other places is small, our startup ecosystem relative to other places is small, our art and culture ecosystem compared to other places is small, our built environment and kind of our architects and our designers relative to other places are small. But I actually think that that's not the right way to think about it, because if you look at what we deal with here, the reality is the challenges and the nature of a city of Bozeman or Billings or Butte or Great Falls is actually much more similar to the challenge of most cities across the country than, say, San Francisco or New York or Houston, right? Like those are actually kind of the zebras. Like the vast majority, I don't have this number off the top of my head anymore, but I think there's something like 100 cities over, maybe it's 150 cities over 250,000 people, but the vast majority of our communities in this country are actually kind of these uh, cities under 100,000 people, or kind of more suburban in nature, kind of constellations around kind of superstore cities. So so like actually what we do here, how we design this community, how we contend with growth, or how we contend with, if you're here in Great Falls, wherever, um, that's more common and valuable to the vast majority of communities in this country. Similarly with technology, like, not to be, I love San Francisco and I spent a bunch of time living there, but not to beat up with them. But like a startup that figures out how to deliver a brownie faster or a sandwich faster to, an AI engineer vibe coding is actually not what most communities in this country are dealing with. And so you look at the innovation of, Bridger Photonics, or uh, Parcel Ag, Reveal Technology, Bridger Aerospace, like those innovations are actually what are most kind of important and consistent with the issues of the country around agriculture, defense, logistics, wildfire, climate. So I think that we have just an incredible opportunity, not just to like shape the nature of our own community in this state, but actually to inform and to lead. Like, and there is something magic about this place, and people when they visit, they feel it. They feel it in our culture, and so I think that um, this is kind of Montana's moment to lead a little bit, and to set not just the culture for what we believe uh, is the right ways to kind of live and to treat each other and think and to invent and to create for ourselves, but also for the rest of the country. Because there is a bit of, America is at a crossroads, I think. I don't think that that is a political statement. It is, regardless of, who you voted for and who won. I think this is the greatest country on earth, and we're at a crossroads. And what breaks my heart a little bit is that there was this poll, this Pew, I think it was a Pew survey poll that came out like maybe 6 months ago, that it was like 60% of Americans do not believe that we are too divided, that we cannot solve the issues we face. Like, that's not an option, my friends.
Yeah.
Like, that is not actually one of our options. So I just don't believe that that's true. I believe that there are economies built to make us believe that our neighbors are more um, unlike us than like us, and the reality is, I think you said before, I think everyone mostly wants the same thing. People want a fair shot in this world. They want access to opportunity. They care that their kids are safe and that their kids have a chance at a better life. And I think most people want that for their neighbors' kids as well, whether that neighbor is next door or in another state.
Yeah, I agree. And when you talk about those, those businesses like Reveal, and I told you I wanted to ask you about
Yeah,
Engine Works. I mean, first, just the architecture in Engine Works is very impressive. I think of that, like that massive door that goes into that room with the stage there,
yeah,
because I was
yeah,
fortunate to
yeah,
have a little bit of a tour, but I was very impressed and a little like overwhelmed just from a lack of knowledge about the quantum computers and the
yeah,
stuff going on there. Is
yeah,
just to know that that stuff is going on here in this valley.
yeah,
There's so many businesses, and I hear from so many people that this town is punching way above its weight class.
yeah.
And
Well, and the stories of it actually are amazing. So I'll mess it up, but it's worth going and doing some of the research on it. Like, this Montana has been Earth. So photonics is one of kind of our core clusters that are leading, but in photonics, biotech, um, defense tech, wildfire technology, a lot of what's so cool about so much of the technology here is it has these amazing, very Montanan stories where, like, one of forgive me, the Hilliman scholars
yep,
named after, yeah.
okay,
So
yep,
so he was I'm gonna mess up his story, but he was a kid from Eastern Montana who basically ends up becoming like the godfather of vaccine technology, from being a farm kid. So much of I believe, like, our photonics and biotech advancements come from researchers who were working in the Yellowstone in the hot springs. And so, like, so many of these things just actually are like innovations that came out of like very Montanan sort of stories. And then flash forward, 50 years in some cases, 100 years in some cases, you have like really advanced ecosystems. But yeah, the innovation campus is a really remarkable thing. I think that uh, that's been a project that's been underway, I think almost like for 15, 20 years or something, and now it's being uh, continued on. Actually, uh, Renee Renee, who's now at the McLaughlin Research Institute in Great Falls, actually I think was one of the leaders, and then Les Craig as well, who's at Next Frontier Capital, were one of the leaders in really driving that forward to say, hey, it's a field. It's a perfect example of that thing of like having vision, where there's this giant empty field, and they're like, imagine if we actually build a campus so that our local entrepreneurs and researchers have a place to actually that's adjacent to our students, so we can build the future together. And they they place two quantum computers in that space, and like companies are showing up. And I think we're really fortunate. We have in the leadership at MSU now, President Brock Tessman, I think, is a really kind of visionary leader at a time where our community at a city and a state level need it, but also just within university, and that relationship between universities and applied technology startups, et cetera. And so I think we're very fortunate to have him. I've met him a couple of times. I was just really impressed.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with you. If you look around a little bit,
Yeah.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Is there anything else anyone should know about you? Your Great Falls journey, and then sounds like New York, San Francisco, and where you're at now.
Yeah. So my quick story is, I was middle five kids in Great Falls, to two great Montanans, and like my whole family, they all showed up in Great Falls, basically, Irish and Italian. And I was a great student and a decent skier. So I used ski racing. I actually followed. There was an exceptional ski racer from Big Sky. I don't know if she'll listen to this, but Keely Kelleher, who's a couple years older than me skiing, she went to the ski academy called Romark Ski Academy in Utah. And I was a very ambitious kid, not in skiing. I was a fine skier, but I was very ambitious in like studies, and I was like, I wanted to go to I had heard of these like prep schools where and so this I visited her and the team there. Is this amazing school with a ski academy attached to it. I'm like, oh, and anyway, I ended up going there. The head ski coach, he's now retired, but an amazing person and mentor, is a guy named Oli Larsson. He's a Swedish guy. He said, Padden, you're a good skier, but you're a great student. And so there's a few of us. The skiers were bringing down the GPA of the academy, and so a couple of us basically were like kind of shoehorned in at the last minute, mostly not to be good skiers, but to keep the GPA up. Anyway, so spent some time in Utah, then went to school at Tufts in Boston. Ended up meeting my wife, Lume, there. We started a kind of photojournalism and like foreign affairs journal called Discourse, which is basically just Montana Fest. I'm a kind of one trick pony maybe. It's basically Montana Festival, but in a academic journal sort of way. And I kind of built it, and my mentor at the time introduced me to Lume because he basically was like, hey, you use way too many commas. You're a horrible editor. I want to introduce you to this woman who's brilliant. And so I followed his direction, and then I basically have been following her ever since. So, and we didn't get together then. We were friends. And but then I studied U.S. Chinese relations. I went to China when the crash happened. I got a phone call from my dean, this wonderful Chinese guy in China, and he said, do you want to be an economic refugee in communist China and come teach at my university for a year? And Lehman Brothers had just collapsed. I was like, sure, man. And so I went and did that. It was an amazing experience. And then I went to Oxford, studied more, did a master's program, studied more US China stuff. And while I was there, it was the beginning of kind of what we then later called the sharing economy. So I'd stayed I did couch surfing first, and then an Airbnb. And then I was basically, if I had an opportunity to stay in London or move back home, and I said the only two places I said I'd never live again were Boston and Washington D.C. I had interned in D.C. with Senator Max Baucus after high school. I took a gap year before going to college, and I loved that experience. But D.C. was not. I'm like, I don't think this is my town. But then Lume and I were kind of chatting, and we weren't dating yet, but we were talking. I'm like, where are you? And she was about to graduate from college, about to graduate from grad school. I'm like, where do you think you're going to go? And she's like, I think either Boston or DC. I'm like, oh, yeah, me too. And so we ended up going back to DC. And when I was in DC, Uber had launched. And I was working for a consulting firm there and kind of turned off by the kind of red blue politics that I was seeing. I'm like, man, we just got to solve these issues. And I'd been to San Francisco, I think, once for a ski race in Tahoe, and we went through, and I had a Guinness in the park over by the Embarcadero Center. But it's a high school kid. But I had never really known startup world, and all of a sudden I started meeting these founders, and I started cold emailing them. So I cold emailed the founders of all these startups that are now massive. But I remember we visited, and I walked into the headquarters at the time of Airbnb, and I was like, I didn't really know what a startup was, but they weren't wearing suits, they weren't working in cubicles, and they seemed to just believe that they could build the future and solve problems. And I'd met all these other interesting kind of energy startups and stuff, and I was like, I need to do this, and I need to be with these people. These are the crazy people. And so actually, I took a job with Get Around, which is a peer-to-peer car sharing company. Moved across the country to San Francisco. Lume and I stayed together. She was working on the Hill for Senator John Kerry, and so we did kind of a long distance thing. And then I was in startup world, and so I worked for Get Around for a number of years. I led their business development and public policy stuff, and then joined Lyft for a minute. Then was poached, and I joined WeWork with a very good old friend of mine who was the head of comms and policy for Uber, and had joined WeWork. And WeWork was growing really rapidly, and I built out kind of the communications and public affairs practice and kind of marketing stuff. And at that time, it was a small team, and so he's like, hey, you cover every city west of Chicago, and I'll cover everything east, and then we'll meet in India, I guess. And we built, I got to be part of building that business, both the rapid growth and then explosion, which was, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for multiple months. And so that was an amazing experience. I ended up leaving. We were kind of getting my team kind of all situated, and I joined another startup called Reef that was based out of Miami. And so at this time, I had, I'd moved from San Francisco to New York with WeWork, and then COVID was coming. It wasn't called COVID yet, but my kind of social and professional graph was all in San Francisco and then in China. So I had one of my friends from grad school was a New York Times reporter in Wuhan, and I was DMing her. I'm like, hey, what is this thing? Is this going to be real? She's like, I would probably not. We just found out that my wife's having our son Wild. We didn't know that. So what his name was?
His name's Wild.
Yeah, Wild. Yeah.
My nephew's name is Rowdy.
Oh, really?
Maybe I think they're probably the same age too.
They should be buddies.
Yeah.
Wild and Rowdy. Yeah. My daughter's name is Maven. She came a few years later, but we found out Lume was pregnant, and I'm like this. And my buddy was like, I wouldn't probably want to be in New York City having a kid right now. And I knew both my mother and my mother-in-law were going to show up wherever we were to help with the kids. And I'm like, I think this is our moment, maybe to get out of the city. And I honestly didn't. It was Lume's idea. She's like, is it time to move back to Montana? And I kind of thought she was messing with me. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, let's do it. And so we got out of New York before it shut down. It was very just crazy time, and trekked. We had, like everyone, kind of our journey during COVID, and got back home to Montana, and moved into our house in Bozeman, and have been here since, and made a couple good Montanans, and have just been here for, I guess, almost 6 years now.
Very cool. And with the writing, are you writing like a lot of copy and stuff? Because I know you said someone was telling you have way too many commas.
Oh yeah. So it's funny actually. I actually think that my joke now is, like, with AI slop and ChatGPT, like, this is the era of human writing. So, like, people are looking for authenticity in anything, and this goes through, like, in design and fashion stuff. So, like, I think in writing now, like, if you write, if you happen to use too many commas, or you use a specific speech pattern, like, and people can see that and they hear your voice, it's actually what people want. So I actually think I believe in technology, and I deeply believe in that humans should practice the craft of of writing their own words. I think the robots can be helpful editors, and thought partners. But yeah, so in my day job, I'm the chief marketing communications officer for Reveal Technology, and most of my work has been for the last 5 years. I've been running a consulting firm where basically I serve as fractional head of communications, fractional head of marketing for early and growth stage startups, and then some nonprofits. I've done some work with National League of Cities and some other Change.org, some other fun nonprofits. But yeah, lots of writing, building brands, brand strategy, communication strategies, and just building. My sweet spot is helping a founder who has gotten a company to basically like about a Series B level stage in venture capital is kind of the stage where you have product market fit, you have some real customers, and then they really are like, all right, let's invest in this thing and really start to try to grow it. And so that's really kind of the stage that I like. I I can't work on anything that I don't deeply believe in. I'm a very mission driven person, so I generally think of my work chapters of what is the mission that I want to try to solve, at least for the next 2 to 5 years, and then go build that. And I am a storyteller, I think, by by DNA, a long line of Irish folks who sat around campfires and told stories and jokes to each other, and that's translated into a job.
That's very cool. I always appreciate that, and I don't write a lot, but when I do, like I'm really writing from
Yeah.
the heart, and I like the things that drive me crazy, and this is probably so elementary, is like the excessive M dashes,
Hmm.
which is like your basic chat GPT
Yeah.
giveaway, and then the emojis. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm just like, I just read some of that stuff and I'm just disappointed. And
Yeah.
when I write, and I don't do blast emails a lot, but once in a while I'll write, send an email to
Yeah.
our subscribers,
I read them. I get them. Yeah.
and it's like, I actually wrote it. It's
Yeah.
not so I'm like, man, I don't like, this might not be professional by any means, but it's like, it's real writing. When I see that, I think to what you're saying is I pick up on it.
Well, I think when things, and this is what I was saying about, like, I use food as an example, but it's also true of, I think it's true of anything. Like when something becomes commodified, actually, I feel like people don't give enough credit to, we are all experts in something and laymen in other things. I think most people are smart. They're creative, and they can see like when they think something's bullshit or not, and whether it's food or writing or
Yeah.
anything. And now that, if writing and calling it intelligence, I think, right, I think I mean it's intelligence, but as that becomes commodified, then the question gets called on what is our unique gift to this world. And then the other thing is just taste. And so as there's like a period of time where really with the taking off of kind of millennial kind of consumer brands, as an example, like which your your wife could probably sympathize with, where all of a sudden every kind of brand started to look the same. People see that, consumers see that, and then they're like, I want something unique, I want something real. And the same is true in design. One of the things, like in a planning department capacity, like people really hate these like in planning of cities, we often we will break out the conversation of function and break it from form. And the reality is, like, if people are like, they'll be like, hey, we need more housing, but then people say, hey, well, the community is against it. On the planning department, when I would talk, sometimes I would get off stage and or off the kind of the dais or whatever, and people would come up to me who would be considered YIMBYs, like the pro housing people, and they'd be like, "Hey, I really appreciated what you said. Like, it's so right." And then the people that those folks would consider NIMBYs, that are like, they're not in my backyard, they're more skeptical, like concerned about growth. Like, "Hey, thank you so much for what you said. I totally agree." And I'm like, "Well, I don't think you listened to the second thing I said, and you didn't listen to the first thing, because I actually think, like in housing as an example, we need homes, we need our children to have homes, we need working families to be able to have homes." And it is true that if you just build housing that is surrounded, if it's a stack of housing surrounded by a parking lot, that's not a home. That's not a home where a mother and a child are going to feel like they have a neighborhood. And so form matters. And I think what people reject, whether it's the M dash or the this is not X, this is Y in ChatGPT, or they see what looks like institutionally backed kind of housing blocks without soul, without culture, that don't feel connected to them. People can see that. It's the same as like if you walk into a coffee shop in a, call it by 2015, every coffee shop in America had Edison light bulbs and the same sort of like thing. People start to feel that and they reject it because not everyone, um, like I use this metaphor a lot. There is this Supreme Court kind of hearing on indecency laws around pornography, and this Supreme Court justice said this thing of like, I don't know how to define indecency, but I know it when I see it. The same thing I think is true with design and with art and of like, or food, right? Like I don't know how to make a like the perfect cheeseburger, but man, I know it when I see it. And like when you walk into, if you walk into a community or you walk into a building, you might not be an expert in design, but you can feel good design happening to you. And so I think it's the same thing with writing. People are drawn to, it's more clear now because it's being commoditized. But so I think what will happen, I hope, is that like the art of letter writing will come back a little bit. Like we've gone in through this period of text and Slack and all these things basically made short form writing, and just like a massive amount of writing has occurred. And now AI has taken that times 100, times 1,000 or whatever. And so being able to say like, oh, I read that newsletter and there was like, your joke was your joke, or your Padden's extra comma. Like, by the way, you can use as many commas as you want. That is the beautiful thing about a comma is the M dash overuse of ChatGPT has brought back, I think I can now use more commas without getting in trouble with my wife because people know you're human. But it both serves a grammatical function and a rhetorical function. So long as you say, hey, I'm actually just, so long as it's a run-on, it might feel like a run-on sentence, but so long as it is actually structurally complete, you can kind of use as many commas as you want. But anyway, that's an argument for me and my wife for another day.
Yeah, and I know these are very elementary levels, and like, but you can just go down the list. I really like the food example of, the Industrial Revolution, and yeah, we have an abundance of food, and I don't even think it's that arguable at this point. That is it very good? Is it of good quality? Is it healthy for us? And I think that's a perfect analogy for a lot of AI stuff right now.
Yeah, there will be a flight to quality of everything. I think people care about what you put in your body, certainly what you feed your kids, but also just the content. Like I think that like with film as an example, like we will have, and we've just seen this with advancement in technology over the last 10 years, but there is more content than there's ever been. And there might be, like before AI, there's like a ton of just kind of YouTube stuff that's there. And that has like a place. And it's also like probably one of the, like, it's like the golden era of television again. And those tools have made it easier. And I think what will probably happen across a lot of these forms is there's just going to be a tsunami of stuff. And some of that kind of, it's like, pulp sort of, if it's pulp fiction, pulp television, pulp writing, pulp whatever, people will start to feel overfed by that. And they're like, I just want to watch something that's great. I want to read something that's great. And I suspect that's, this like, I appreciate that you do this podcast in person because I also just think that that's true. Like we're kind of frogs in boiling water with Zoom calls and, whatever. And then COVID just put us, it turned the temperature up and everything is Zoom, everything is remote. And now there's this desire for in-person sort of experiences and spending time together and having human connection. So I think we can navigate all of those changes in technology innovation and changes in what we would call, fashion or taste, whether it's words, food, whatever. The big question is, can we navigate the economic and labor force disruption? I think that is the challenge that we have to solve for our children, but we also have to solve it for us because we're all going to be kind of surfing that wave together. And maybe a bad metaphor because I cannot surf. But so we'll see how I can do.
Yeah, I mean, you've got young kids. I don't have any kids yet, but it's something I think about plenty for myself. For the next generation.
And when I say our kids, I mean like collectively. The students coming out of school today, the students going into high school today, like that period of formation, you're like navigating, you know, what is possible is it's just it is a fascinating and I think mostly exciting time, but it's gonna be a wild ride.
I just heard recently in a keynote speech that like the youngest generation, if you're what they're looking for in hiring right now is stability
Mm,
because they've lived all nothing in nothing but times of instability
yeah,
between COVID and 2008 and everything. They've just never had this like, and now with AI, it's like,
yeah,
can we what can we don't know what it's going to be like in a week.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's real. My you know my I graduated in 2009 and mentioned I took a year off between high school and school. So all of my friends from high school graduated right in the middle of 2008 and crash. I had a buddy who was working at Lehman Brothers and he called me. He's like, he was brand new. And he called me. He's like, I'm like in the movies. I have a box, but nothing's in my box because I didn't have anything. So, but that all of a sudden, when that kind of monster's chasing you a little bit, I like I spoke Chinese, had worked, for a U.S. senator. I thought that like I had some talent, and all of a sudden you're going into a labor market where it's like no help needed. That was, I think, for our sub generation of experience that graduated in that 2008, 2009, 2010 kind of era. You then kind of were outrunning the monster behind you, and I don't know that I stopped running until I got married and felt like I found like
Yeah.
my heart calmed. I was like, oh, we're good. And I think the students who were in college or in high school during COVID, I can't imagine what that was like.
Yeah. Well, I think Montana Festival is a great place to talk about these ideas and
Yeah.
talk about kind of to where you started solutions because I love hearing about solutions and I love when a group of people want to work on something. It's exciting and it's what other choices do we have?
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun. I mean, building things as individuals and then together is just fascinating. So if people want to go sign up, we um, have right now it's in kind of general pass order. The early bird period is over, so the passes are 300 bucks. But I don't know how many people listen to this podcast, so this might be dangerous. But if you use a code at checkout, partners 250, you can get a $250 pass. So I think your community um, can benefit from that. But it's great experience that gives you access to all of the main stages, to the big track workshops, Design Town, Startup City, Artland. Those will be really really fun and smart kind of networking opportunities. Then there's a whole host of side events you can sign up for free. There's dinners that then they cost, like they're subsidized, but they're great networking opportunities. And yeah, and then big fun concert and lawn party on the Emerson lawn this year. So we've got some just incredible, like honestly, like this whole thing, we don't pay ourselves to do this. It's all sponsor driven. The tickets basically cover about 30% of the cost probably, but it's entirely made possible because the sponsors, it's a barn raising. So the big sponsors this year, they're all kind of still coming in, but Reveal Technology, Airbnb, Bridger Photonics, Montana State, the city of Bozeman, a lot of the architecture firms, 45 Architecture. I'm Next Frontier Capital, Two Bear Capital. I'll forget most of them now. And then the speakers that we've announced so far, there's still much more to come, but it's really exciting. George Packer, the writer for the Atlantic, he's written incredible books, but The Unwinding, which is about American politics, then a more positive, a kind of hopeful one called Last Best Hope, which I think is beautiful given, we named the nonprofit Last Best Future because of, Last Best Place of Montana. But we just actually announced Taylor Kitsch, famous actor and founder of Howler's Ridge, which is a great wellness and retreat center that's opening up this year outside of Bozeman for veterans and folks who are in recovery. Is speaking on stage with Jeff Lewson, the founder of 45 Architecture. Just I think we have 50 plus amazing speakers, Montanans and folks flying in. And then yeah, a lot of good food, cold beer, and good music. So it'll be a good time. But if you haven't already, go get your ticket. I think it's good value. And yeah, if anyone wants to sponsor, we're always there's programming, marketing, the ticket sales, and then fundraising for this thing. But it's a good fun event, and so we're grateful for everyone's trust and time.
I yeah, highly recommend it just from being there myself, and I'm looking forward to it. Is it the 11th and 12th?
Yeah, June 11th and 12th, which is Thursday and Friday. So it should be fun. And then we're kind of leaving. Then our hope is that people can kind of plan their own, things to do together with friends into the weekend and go get outside Paradise Valley or in Bozeman or in Big Sky and get
Very
after it.
cool. What's the domain if people want to check out the website?
It is montanafestival.org.
Cool.
We also have montanafestival.com, so either one of those will work. But
I'll link everything
Cool.
when this gets posted.
Cool.
I appreciate you, Padden. It was
Cool.
fun talking about this.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening, folks. You can find the full blog post for every episode along with key takeaways and links at mountain-mule.com. If you haven't yet, consider following the show. That one small action helps these Montana businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this podcast keep going too. If you know a business that would be a good fit for the show, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out through the website or social. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. See you on the next show.